Welcome back to the show, as it were. If you were watching us earlier today, you should be all accustomed to our conversations. I'm Dave McHugh. We are now with the top 25 double take. I really feel like I've been in the studio all day because, side note, we got a bunch of packages, including while I was recording, 2 more showed up at the door. We've got a ton of new jerseys, some swag to put on. I can't wait to show you all. We put one out today on a vintage jersey. We may have a wall full of vintage jerseys coming up here soon. Can't wait for that, but Villa Julie uniform. That's going to be fun. For us, the top 25 double take. You're a Hoopsville member, so thanks for joining in. Email us, hoopsville@d3sports.com, or you can send it on Twitter. But we're also on YouTube streaming the show, and so you can join us to chat there, as several have done over time. So please join us. Look forward to having you here on the show and chatting with you all about top 25. Men's top 25 is out. Women's top 25 is out. And on the men's side, new number 1 yet again. Chicago split the weekend and tumbled 5 spots to 6. Montclair picked up some first place votes. I don't know by who. Montclair's now got 11 in first place. First NJAC team we've had in a very long time. Randolph-Macon is second, St. Thomas third, Trinity fourth, Emory fifth, all of them receiving top 25 votes. 2 teams are out, WashU and Trinity, Texas. Maryville, Tennessee, and Rhodes, 2 Tennessee teams that Ryan Scott picked up on, are into the poll. I've got a problem with one team on the bottom of the poll, but we'll talk about that in a minute because it is the top 25 double take. And to discuss that and to talk about what's where and how, where, and you name it, dubious, deep dive, and debatable selections, we always go to Ryan Scott. And this week, we're bringing in one of our data experts. It's Matt Snyder joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Gentlemen, it is good to see you. Another chaotic week where a lot of tough decisions had to take place, Ryan.
Yeah, it was an interesting time to do a ballot and try and figure out where all these teams need to go. But again, this is what we like. We like the unpredictable part of this because ultimately the tournament is unpredictable. And so I kind of like it for the whole season to be that way too.
Fair. I mean, I wouldn't mind a few weeks where I can just rubber stamp sometimes my top 25, but I do vote on the men's side, not the women's. Matt, your thoughts on this? This is just, as I wrote my blog, it'll come out tomorrow or the next day. We're complaining, we're pulling our hair out, but man, this is fun.
Yeah, it's a fun time of a year and a fun season, right? I think the losses that some teams in the top 25 take just signifies that it's a year in which almost anyone can beat anyone else in Division III basketball, and we get this kind of rotation of teams in and teams out. It's fun to see, teams Maryville, Franklin, and Marshall Rhodes coming in at the end of the ballot that they've been kind of hanging in there. It just means there's parity in Division III basketball, and that's fun to see.
I'll take parity so much over what we had 15 some odd years ago, where it was very top heavy. You guys are all public voters, so it's not like it's shocking, but let's talk about first place votes and maybe what went into it. Matt, starting with you, who are you voting for first? And did you have to change this week?
I'm still a Trinity, Connecticut voter. Looks like I'm one of 2, and I've been hanging in with them for a few weeks now. Look, there's a lot of even teams, right? We see the vote being split like this, so I think there's a lot of reasonable choices you can make. To me, though, Trinity, they have 2 losses that are 2 really good teams by really thin margins, and I think they're still a really strong team. To me, they're still one of the favorites, and I'm still comfortable voting them at number 1, but I think it is really close up there.
Ryan, before I get to my thought, Ryan, you're on top 25. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I debated back and forth. I ended up going with Randolph-Macon. I have Trinity number 2 for a lot of the same reasons Matt said. The losses were close to good teams. What I have seen is they've struggled on offense the last couple of weekends, and that's the one thing that's always been the big question mark for them. Their offense was pretty efficient going to the title last year, and it was efficient most of the year this year. And so that was just, it's splitting hairs at this point, but that was just kind of the thing. Randolph-Macon's firing on all cylinders right now, both ends of the floor. They're playing super well. And so I just kind of rewarded that over a Trinity team that maybe had a couple of hiccups on offense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I stuck with Trinity after their first loss, and because, again, no surprise, right? No one expected anybody to go through on this season undefeated, unless you're NYU women's basketball. And so I stuck with them. But then the second loss in 3 games to a team that you should see coming kind of for me was, okay. So I dropped Trinity for that. And I went with Randolph-Macon last week. with the idea of, listen, if Randolph-Macon was playing Montclair's schedule, they'd be undefeated. They'd be absolutely trolling through the NJAC, and Montclair wouldn't be doing so well against the ODAC. But Ryan Scott made a comment last week when we were talking about the NJAC about, hey, Stockton's a lot better now. So I thought, okay, let me see how Montclair does against Stockton. They destroyed them by 31. And so I thought to myself, okay, if Ryan's accurate, and I trust Ryan in his assessment of teams because I think he sees them better than I do, I'm going to think, okay, that's a ginormous win after barely getting by him by 2. I'm going to reward the undefeated at this point. Macon had a great week. They beat Hampden City in a rivalry game, and they beat up on Mary Washington, who was probably a little bitter coming off the Christopher Newport loss. So it's nothing Macon did. I just thought, okay, at this point, maybe I got to be leaning in on the undefeated. Maybe I'll change my mind next week. But that's kind of where my mentality was this week. All right. With that all done and out of the way, and no, there's a lot more you can read in my blog later for you Hoopsville voters or individuals. Let's talk Dubious. It's getting hard this time of year. Admittedly to these guys, I tried to get out of the mix so we weren't throwing 9 teams into every conversation every week. So we're just doing 6. So I get out of the mix, and we're still at a point where like, oh, we're running out of teams. So we're letting the guys get bites at the apple of teams we've discussed before, as long as preferably it's not the same grouping. I think they're still dubious. Okay. And it's a good reason. And maybe if it didn't happen like last week. All right. Matt, my fault. Matt Snyder tried to talk about a team that I would like to know why they're still in the top 25. This week, but we literally just talked about it last week. So with that in mind, Ryan Scott, I'm going to be a little late here on getting to these logos because I'm just late getting to things. But Ryan Scott, let's talk top Dubious squad on the men's side. Who is your pick for Dubious?
Okay, and again, as you mentioned, we're splitting hairs at this point, but I feel like a team that has slipped a little too high for my comfort at this point is Christopher Newport. Obviously, they had the really big win over Mary Washington this week, and they looked really good. And I did move them up in my estimation and up in my poll. I do still feel like this is a team with a ceiling. This is a team that's limited, and I just don't feel like a top 10 placement is where they are. I still kept Mary Washington ahead of them this week. I watched most of that game, and obviously CNU played really well. But I still feel like if they played, 10 times, CNU might win 4, but I don't think I'd pick them to win 5. You know what I mean? Like on a given night, I'm still more comfortable with Mary Washington. And again, not to say CNU isn't good, but I do think they're limited. I do think there's a ceiling, and probably somewhere between 15 and 20 maybe is the right spot in my mind. And I think maybe they're floating a little up there.
We did use them last week, but we're letting Ryan have a slide on this one because I think it's a good conversation. Yeah, Matt, your thoughts on Newport?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit, I'm not dubious on Christopher Newport as a team, right? But I think I agree with Ryan. I had them more at number 15 rather than number 8. I think that's just a little bit too high. And maybe this time of year when we've talked about a whole bunch of teams, that's where we're at with dubious is there may be 7 spots too high. We know this is a year where anyone can beat anyone. There's a lot of even teams there, but I had them at 15. I think I maybe would agree with that at that standpoint. Still a team that can make a lot of noise in March in a tournament, but yeah, maybe more middle of the poll than top 10.
This is going to be wild. So I've been keeping my reins on Christopher Newport on my poll most of the season for a lot of what you've all said. And I'm like, okay, nope, this is my ceiling. My ceiling's right around 15. I'm not moving them, I'm not moving. Then they go and beat Mary Washington. And because of all the other movement, I floated them up. I'll admit I don't like where I have them. I have them 9. But I just couldn't find a good excuse not to keep them a little bit lower. But I think you guys are right. I'm part of pushing them a little too high, obviously, but I was so good till this week. I really was. Matt, who is your dubious pick?
Yeah, maybe in a similar vein here. I'm going to be dubious on Endicott at number 14. Another team I'm not top 25 is great. I've been voting them almost all season long, but it feels like maybe they've benefited from now playing a softer part of their schedule these last few weeks when we've seen teams take losses around them. I still feel really good about them being a top 25 team, but I wonder if they're another team that's maybe been floating up on us as some of this churn has happened in the top 25. I think they're still hanging most of their resume on that win against Tufts that happened, what was that, November 16? That's a really, really good win. I think that's one that you should be able to kind of pin a big part of your resume on. But that's really what's getting them to number 14. I know that the CNE schedule that they play is not really in their control, but some of these results I think are also starting to be a little bit questionable, like a 1-point win over Roger Williams, a 3-point win over Wentworth. I'm at 19, so it's maybe not too far off from number 14, but it just feels like they're starting to float up. I don't know if Endicott is that good, even though I still think they are really good.
Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've got similar. I've kind of been floating them down because of this conference schedule that they're playing. I think, on talent-wise, they're super good, and I think they could beat just about anybody on a given night. I question when you're playing a conference like this for so long, whether you can keep the edge, right? And their schedule might actually be, like you mentioned, if they had lost one of those two close games instead of winning it, it might have been the thing that catalyzes them to lock in for the playoffs. I'm just a little bit worried that they just haven't been forced to play at the level that they need to. And maybe it might have been good to grab a loss here somewhere and in order to kind of lock in. And that would give me a little more confidence, I think, oddly, if they lost one and then were able to return with some big wins than the fact that they're just kind of scooting along here through the conference. I am at 21, so pretty similar to where Matt was. And again, I've kind of been dropping them down a spot or two each week just because I am worried about that lag.
Interesting enough, I've been keeping them on a ceiling. I've pegged them where I want. Everybody can move ahead of them if I feel like it for those exact reasons. I kind of let go of the reins on Christopher Newport. I've held firm on Endicott. I've got them at 15, and they've only moved up there because, again, it's one loss. But I have the same read. Like, at some point, I know conferences are tough, but if you're really a top 25 team in that conference, it shouldn't be close games anymore. And, Nichols isn't the beast that they used to be in the past, right? And Western New England just isn't that tough, even though I think they're having a great year. So I've literally limited to them. If you look back at my poll, I think they're unchanged for the last 4 weeks. I've just moved teams around them. Yeah, I could drop them maybe, but I'm leaning on the fact that you're still 21 at this point in the season. So I've got them capped right there at 15. All right, good choices. We'll move on to deep dive here. By the way, we got some interesting choices coming up. I'm looking forward to this. Deep dive, Matt, we'll start with you. Who's your deep dive selection?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Amherst. I think they got 5 points in the poll, so they're getting a little bit of attention here. But for a program with that name and that history, I'm wondering if they're getting a little bit overlooked here in the NESCAC. They have taken a few losses, but they also do have some really good wins. They've beaten Tufts as well. They've beaten Wesleyan in conference play. They went out to California and beat Cal Lutheran. I know that's not the same Cal Lutheran team as it had been in the past few seasons, but that's still a solid win. But they've really taken care of business here in the NESCAC, where they're already 6-2. They've got that win over Tufts. I think there's a world in which they're the 3 seed in the NESCAC tournament, and the 3 seed in the NESCAC is kind of top 25-ish. So I think after a few years maybe wandering in the wilderness a little bit, I wonder if Amherst is starting to get top 25 consideration here, and if we should be starting to take a little bit of a look at them.
Mammoths wandering in the wilderness. Great analogy. I'll get my thoughts in a bit. Ryan, yours first.
Yeah, I mean, so I had them sitting at 27 on my poll this week. So, I mean, that was one that I would have considered for a deep dive as well. Because I do think that they're winning the right games. And I'm going to give the shout out to the guys on the D3 boards for the NESCAC room, have talked about how this team started out trying to be the big dog in these games and kind of overpower teams. And now, as they've gotten into NESCAC season, they're playing a lot scrappier, which is not what you expect out of Amherst with the name and the pedigree and all of that kind of stuff, but it's working better for the personnel that they have. They're kind of muddying games up, and they're really scrapping at it. And you got to see that in the Tufts win the other night. That was really a hard fought one. And I think they played at a level of Tufts. I don't think Tufts really played down in any sort of way. That was a win that Amherst earned. And yeah, you'd like to see them win a road game here somewhere against somebody really good. But of course, the NESCAC doesn't give you that opportunity. They lost the two really big road games they had, and they don't get the return until conference tournament time. But I think they're definitely a team to be watching. I haven't seen them enough to really go in depth on what they're doing, but I do think the kind of change of philosophy and the way that they're playing is gonna help them.
I got to see him in Vegas, and listen, I thought they were a good team. The Whittier game, they out-rebounded them, had less turnovers. Whittier just shot well, 45.5% from the floor. Neither team shot free throws well. Both were 9 of 14 from the line. It was pretty, fugly. But I liked what I saw from Amherst. They actually won the second half after trailing by 9 at halftime. They won the second half and made that a 3-point ball game. In the Ohio Northern game, it wasn't a great game. Ohio Northern came in with a chip on their shoulder. I think Ohio Northern's a better team than people realize. And they got blitzed in the second half, 39-24, and it just wasn't a game. I like how Amherst has responded to that. Their two losses since are Trinity and Wesleyan, and they've won a bunch since. I can't vote for them yet. I want to see where it's going, but I think Marlon Sears finally has a team he feels comfortable with and the group that he likes, and that grittiness we saw a little bit in Vegas. I think the Amherst program is developing the right way, and you ask people who aren't insane, I'll put it that way, they like what Marlon's doing. They like where this program's headed, and I think they're finally getting over. I think this was the year we wanted to see them get over that hump, and I think they're there. To your point, Middlebury and Williams ahead. Win both those going into the NESCAC tournament. They might be a sleeper there for sure. Ryan, who's your deep dive?
So the team I had 26, nobody voted for this week. I guess I was almost there, and I would have broken the internet, I think, but I was getting ready to vote for Yeshiva. I think it might finally be time.
You're insane.
I know we talked about the really tough schedule that they had at the beginning of the year, and they didn't win those games. But they really did learn a lot. If you watch them, I watched them in person earlier in the year. I saw them against Illinois Wesleyan midway, and I've watched the last couple of games on stream. And it really just feels like they've gotten tougher, and they've gotten a lot more consistent. They're going deeper down the bench. I just think that they're actually putting together what that conference, that crazy non-conference schedule was supposed to be. And to give a shout out to Matt, I watched the D3 Datacast this morning, where one of the questions they had was the 4 close losses that they took against those good teams that were within 2 or 3 points. If they had won all those games, they'd be in our top 16 right now. And those were close games that they had the ability to win. And so I certainly think, that this is a team we got to be looking at. Nobody voted for them. I didn't vote for them, but they're on the cusp. And of course, this will be the moment that they trip and, lose by 20 to someone they should beat by 40. But maybe that's different this year.
They're 14-8, 13-0 in conference play. That's just one little note. I'll also add a quick little note. Matt, you go ahead before I say my piece.
Yeah, I mean, their resume is they beat NYU, great win. And then they've lost a lot of close games against tough teams. And there's also a lot of other teams out there that if they had only won the games that they lost, that they would be in a great position as well in our top 25. I think Yeshiva is good, but are they top 25 good to me? Not right now. I watched them play Illinois Wesleyan really tough on their home court. I was at that game. That was great. They could have won that game. They unfortunately did not. Tufts and Mary Washington overtime, those would have been great wins. They unfortunately didn't get them. But still, even if they had won maybe one of those, it's still a bunch of losses. You're winning, your schedule is tough enough that maybe you're winning 20% of games that you should have won 20% of, right? It's kind of what it is. Again, good team to me, maybe fringe top 50 team, but maybe not top 25.
I'll just say if Amherst and Yeshiva are playing tomorrow, I'm going to pick the Hope team. I think they're that close.
Okay.
I mean, listen, this sounds a little like the IWLCA women's lacrosse poll. It's a deep dive for people who truly understand. They'll vote a team who is below 500 into their top 25 because they play a really tough schedule. Okay, when are they going to win would be my retort on that. I get what you're saying. This conference is, listen, the Farmingdale State win is the one I certainly circled and took note of. They beat them 84-60 at home. Certainly an impressive victory there on the 24th of January. That's nothing to slouch against. And yes, tough against Mary Washington, tough ish against Trinity. Tough against Tufts. The Illinois Wesleyan game came down to a call at the end. Listen, I get it. But if I'm voting for a top 25 team, they got to win those games. They got to win at least half those games. We made this comment about New Jersey City women's basketball. Go out and have a world-beating schedule and then do nothing against it. Okay. Hats off to Elliott. He's taken the news that they got to go challenge themselves. He's taken the news that they got to go play a better non-conference schedule, and he's gotten teams to bite. Awesome. But if they're really that good, I think they at least won half those. Like Chapman, first game of the season. Anyway, just Ryan put this up last night, and I nearly threw my computer. Because I've been dying to also say, when are they proving they're in the big leagues? Because I think they need a win. I mean, they got smoked by Wesleyan, 84-69. That said, they could be in the tournament because they are clearly playing in the skyline right now better than everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a team to watch. I don't behoove that at all. And this is also why you're now allowed to pick other teams. I realize maybe we gave Ryan way too much of a tight list there, and he had to go somewhere. But I like to talk. Hey, let's bring it up. It's not a bad idea. All right, debatable. Let's go debatable. Though Yeshiva felt debatable. They fit the deep dive actually very well. Ryan, who's your debatable?
Well, so you started to talk about it at the beginning because I want to debate Montclair. Sometimes we talk about debatable as some sort of negative. It's really just wanting to talk about that. I think this is a super good team. And I've been a little light on them because, one, the schedule has maybe not been what we wanted it to be. And they're not flashy in any sense of the word. But this week, it kind of struck me that what they're doing right now is kind of similar to what Trinity was doing at this point last year, right? Like, we knew they were really, really good. They were executing flawlessly. They were really intense on the defensive end. They weren't making any mistakes. I don't know how many of us thought that they were going to run through the tournament the way that they did and continue that excellence as the competition got better. And we obviously don't know what Montclair is going to do, but if they're setting themselves up like one of those teams that can sort of ride defense and a lack of turnovers, right? Protecting the ball right a long way into March. So I just wanted to get everybody else's thoughts on that, and Matt too.
They're also putting up points, but Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one thing that's hurting Montclair State right now is that the NJAC just isn't the NJAC that it has been kind of the last 3 or 4 years at least, where they've had a bevy of strong teams. And now maybe that would have led to a loss or two for Montclair State right now, but because there's not really many of those other kind of even top 100 type teams in the NJAC even right now, they're not being able to kind of showcase their talent against other highly rated teams, I think, like they maybe could have in the last several years. I'm someone who's still holding them back at kind of number 7 because I haven't really seen maybe those quality top wins that they've put up, but they are looking good, right? They've won all these games. I think that's a credit. It's not like all the games have been easy. They still have played other, let's say, top 100 teams in conference and in non-conference. So I think they're a strong team, but I think they're kind of a team for me that's almost ceilinged just because they don't have that top tier opponent on their schedule this year.
Yeah, and again, what I said earlier, I got into this tough spot of if Randolph-Macon was playing their schedule, would they be undefeated? Most likely. I note the St. Joseph's win by 5. I note that, they took a 2-point win over Stockton and have turned that in now into a 31-point win the second go-around. I also note that none of these games are competitive. And to some degree, when you are in that conference, and I realize it's not as great a conference as it was last year, for example, but you're taking on a conference that knows you well, and you're just absolutely pasting some teams. 104-73 to Stockton, or an average Ramapo team, 103-75, 84-78 to Camden. I know it's not a great team. William Patterson, 96-82. Rowan's not having a great season, but beat him by 12. And by the way, no one can stop this offense. Like, they're putting up 80, 90, 100-point games almost all season. Their lowest output was Penn State Harrisburg in the beginning of the season at 75. Otherwise, it is all high scoring. At some point, I'm like, they're undefeated at this juncture near the end of the season. Something's got to be working well for Justin Potts and his squad. That all said, Ryan and Matt, everything you say is in my head too.
I would just say if anybody hasn't had a chance to watch, if I don't know if it's available, I should check probably before I say this, but the January 14th game against TCNJ, the last couple of minutes of that game, if you want to watch, like TCNJ played out of their minds. Like they
Agreed.
should have won that game. And Montclair was really impressive to just, they were hitting shots, they're making defensive plays, and like that's both teams were playing really high level basketball at the end of that game. And Montclair was able to pull that out. It was really impressive to me. And I think that's pretty indicative. If you haven't had a chance to see them play, to go track a couple of those minutes down, it's a good one to watch.
Just note, they'll play maybe a disheartened New Jersey City squad coming up next. I say that just with the news coming out. Coincidentally, they'll then play Kane right after that. And then they finish with TCNJ, and that TCNJ game is on the road. So
I assume it's a senior night for that big TCNJ senior class. I would guess, that could be a really interesting one.
Interesting. And I don't think there's a couple of years missing, but I think I went all the way back into the 80s to find the last time an NJAC squad, and they weren't even called the NJAC then, went through the conference undefeated on the men's side. So
wow.
If they were to pull this off, and those years missing aren't years that have it, and I'll actually check with our friend Ira Thor. He can probably dig this info up for us. This may be the first undefeated season an NJAC program has done since the 80s, or at least maybe even 1980. Like, it's insane.
And I was just noticing, I wonder if Matt Goldsmith will make it down for that senior night, because Middlebury season will be over by then. So he'll have a chance. They are eliminated now officially from the next
Goldsmith
playoffs. They can't
taking
get in,
strays here on the top 25 broadcast. Damn.
I'm trying to make it positive that he might be able to get back for these guys he
You
recruited.
don't think it was cold enough up in Vermont that you had to fire some more ice at him? Like, damn. No, you're right. He was integral with that, and that's a game I'm hoping I'm going to have some time to watch. Evan Elberg's done well there. We had him on the show recently. I'm really impressed with what Evan's done at TCNJ this season. All right, Matt, who is your debatable?
Yeah, let's debate Gustavus Adolphus. They're at number 7 in the poll that came out today. I'm voting them at number 8, so almost the same spot, one spot lower. That feels pretty appropriate to me, but it feels like maybe this is as high as they can go right now. I feel like we've talked about that a lot with a lot of these teams. Their best win, I think, is a home game against UW Platteville. That's a solid win, but Platteville themselves is kind of only a fringe top 25 contender. I don't think they're getting any votes right now. Their next most difficult game was a home loss to Whitworth. Again, not a terrible opponent, but those are their best 2 games, 1 win and 1 loss. They lost that game by 2. I think they have a stable of kind of solid wins after that, but there's not really a whole bunch to pin an entire resume on. Credit to them for winning a bunch of games, for being, far and away the best team in the MIAC right now. I just don't know with what they've played if we know, could they rise to be number 5, or even for sure they're top 10. It just seems like they're a team that hasn't been fully tested either, and I don't think I fully know what Gustavus Adolphus could be in March.
The irony is they're playing the bottom of the conference to finish. Their toughest coming up is going to be Carleton coming next, who's 12-10, 8-5 in conference play. Then it's the bottom 2. Scholastica at 6-16, 2-11, and St. Mary's 120-012. Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good team. Obviously, they're winning all these games. You watch them. I think back to around Christmas time, they were going down to that Daytona tournament. They were playing. Cortland was there, and I think Dubuque was one of the teams in that thing.
They played Transylvania.
And at the time, it seemed like those were similarly good teams, right? That the talent level, those would be good matchups. And obviously, like, Cortland is still a very good team. They're just not at the same level that we've got Gustavus right now. And it's hard to know whether they're still at that level, right? That they're maybe, 35 or 40, or are they in the top 10? I think you watch them, they have a lot going for them. They've got a lot of, the leadership is really strong. It seems like they really take care of the ball. They run their stuff really well. They got a lot of length. They're the kind of team that you think, this could easily be a top 10 team. But as Matt said, we don't really know the comparison. And my thought went back to Redlands from last year. Not that they had the same style or anything, but Redlands was a team that you could see on the stream. You could watch the games. You could go, there's a ton of talent there. And we said, we don't know what they're going to do until they get into the tournament. Last year, Redlands really came through and got, I think, farther than a lot of people thought. And the talent we saw there proved itself. But, that doesn't always happen. And we just won't be able to tell really until Gustavus gets in. And they're going to be hamstrung by geography because they're going to come up probably too early against some of these really good programs that are out of the Midwest that maybe they are an Elite Eight level team, but they might not be able to get there because of where they're situated.
Once again, a team that you guys have brought up that I let go of the reins on, let Gustavus float. I've got them in my top 5. I don't know if I want to admit where. Came down to me is they're still winning. Yeah, the conference isn't maybe what we're used to. St. Olaf's second, Concordia, Moorhead, and Carleton, along with St. John's, are third. St. John's just isn't the team we thought was going to be. I don't know. For me, it comes down to, again, they're still winning in conference and still playing well. The Transylvania was the other team that they played out there in Daytona, and they got by them by 3. They got past Cortland by 7, and they've been unstoppable other than that loss against Whitworth. But admittedly, I may have the Gusties too high. But Justin DeGrude's got a great team out there. It's a weird MIAC this year. It's just a weird conference.
Well, it doesn't give you the same comparison. As I said, like, I can watch that team and go, yeah, they're as good as Trinity or Chicago or anybody, but we don't really know that because we haven't seen them play a team like that.
No, you're right. It's a good choice. Matt, is there something that you talk about the big win to bring them up, right? Like a significant milestone marker that might not come to the NCAA tournament, or do you think getting through the conference unscathed, which would be insane in this conference, and get through the conference tournament too, would that be something that you'd lean in on?
I mean, it definitely depends on what goes on around them. I don't think I'm keeping them at a hard ceiling at 7 or 8 or whatever. It's just going to be difficult for them to get that really big signature win. But look, I think for some of these teams that we've debated, like Gustavus and Montclair, I think also just avoiding bad losses is a really big thing that sometimes gets overlooked in these conversations. It would have been really easy for Gustavus Adolphus to lose, that overtime game to Concordia Moorhead, but they found a way to win that one. They've had some other close games that they've found ways to win, and that's maybe the difference between these teams that we put in the top 25 and higher, and a team like Yeshiva, who hasn't gotten those wins in a lot of those close games, right? They have not found ways to win them, and that has kind of kept them out. So I think avoiding bad losses is a really good thing, and I don't want to discount that either.
By the way,
it's hard to ride that bus across the snowy Minnesota and win some of those games consistently, right? Like, there's a lot of conference games, and none of them are like easy, right? Even if the teams have a lower record, it's a tough area to be in.
All right, that's a great point. By the way, when's the last time a MIAC team got through conference play unscathed?
Yeah,
I mean, St. John's hasn't done it.
Yeah. It's got to be a St. Thomas team that did it, right?
Yeah. It's probably St. Thomas. You're right. Probably since. Yeah, no, that's a great point. It probably is St. Thomas. Quick note: I jumped on Transylvania just to see because Gustavus played them. Brian Lane's team's a bit on the roll here. They lost 3 or 4 to start January, but since then they've won, I think, 8 straight. They're on in a 3-way tie atop an HCAC that I haven't been paying attention to. Hey, shout out to Brian Lane, friend of the show. I got to do something nice to him. Gentlemen, before I let you go, any final thoughts on the week ahead? Probably another number 1 vote up for grabs. Who knows? Matt?
I mean, just excited. It seems like every week we have terrific games, whether they're out in the UAA. It seems like those games are always going into overtime or at least within one possession. I would be surprised if the number 1 conversation is settled now from here until the tournament, right? We're going to see a lot of churn still and a lot of exciting basketball still to come.
Yeah, great point. Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the power conferences are the places we're watching right now, right? Because that's where you're going to make a lot of difference. We've got a bunch of these teams that are kind of still unknowns because of the schedule they still have to play, right? This is the opposite of the Gustavus question we were just talking about. And, being able to see who buckles down in February. I mean, this is so much of the season, right? Everything that's happened up until now is preparation for now. And so it's almost like the curtain's going up and it's time for the show to start. So exciting.
It's gonna be a fun ride the rest of the way. I can't wait. Looking forward to it. Matt, thank you for your time. We'll be having you on a future show in the near future.
Sure. Yeah.
He'll be joining us for the Top 16 show. Ryan, as always, stick around because we're gonna be talking women's basketball here in a moment. Gentlemen, enjoy the rest of the season nonetheless. I know you will, but I just have to say it as part of the contract.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah.
See you guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Once again, thanks to Matt Snyder and Ryan Scott. Ryan Scott literally is joining us here in a moment to talk women's basketball. Scott Peterson's going to jump on board as well. I just got to cover up their names because for some reason I forgot to do my due diligence and put names in places that needed to be named. But nonetheless, if you got questions, again, join us on the chat room in the live stream. We'll try and answer your questions there. Or if you got questions, you're watching this on the archive, which means either you have early access being a Hoopsville member or you don't, and you should go to buymeacoffee.com/Hoopsville and sign up, darn it. Email us hoopsville@d3sports.com. That's hoopsville@d3sports.com. The same thing will be done on the women's side. We will talk who we think is Dubious, Deep Dive, and Debatable. And joining us on the Hoopsville hotline, as I mentioned, Ryan Scott and Scott Peterson. Good to see you. Scott Peterson, great to see you, sir. And we will get this out of the way now. Congratulations. You changed the hat. You most certainly deserve it. What a win by Seattle in that Super Bowl.
Pretty cool to see, especially after losing one of the Patriots, taking one down against the Patriots.
That's true. I can only imagine what it was like to be in your house yesterday.
I bought a new sweatshirt and a new hat, and it was supposed to come here Saturday, and it got here today. So I said, I got to put it on today.
Perfect timing. Well, there you go. There's our answer. All right, guys, top 25 women's side. First off, let's just talk NYU. They got to 82. 90 would be halfway through the NCAA tournament. Do you think, first off, can they close this out, or do you think there might be a letdown, Scott?
Boy, that's such a hard one to say. They've looked more beatable recently than they have looked in a very long time, which is still a relative statement to say about a team as good as they are. It's definitely like, I feel the range of teams that I think has a fighting chance is growing. It's still not a very large number of teams, and it still is not more than half the time if they just kept facing NYU on a neutral court. But I think there are some things that you can do against NYU, especially if you can take care of the ball, keep them in the half court, and kind of hope for an off shooting night from some of their shooters.
Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what Scott said is very true, and I wonder if this streak is almost hurting them in terms of the pressure. I know they're trying to really get the gauge off, right? They're trying to make a big deal of the fact that it's over, even though UConn is kind of still out there looming, because I know that it's hard to work through. I think they're beatable, right? That doesn't mean they're going to lose, but I've been the last couple of weeks voting them third in the poll. If I were choosing right now a game tomorrow, I would pick Scranton and Oshkosh over them. Now, those are the only two teams that I would pick over them, and I'm not sure anybody else has much of a chance. And of course, NYU could beat either of those teams, and they might be able to do it easily. But that's just, where I'm at right now. And that's just different than what we've had for 2 years straight, because I didn't think there was a single team the last 2 years who had any shot. And so I guess it's more like real now that they're actually a team who could potentially be beaten. But it's really a testament that this is how we have to talk about them. That we're like, yeah, they might be able to get beaten, maybe. It's just amazing what they put together.
Yeah, really is. I think it tells you that Carnegie Mellon's a pretty darn good team too, which is why I said this stretch of 4 and 6 was going to be tough. But listen, the end isn't going to be much easier. WashU and Chicago still wouldn't mind knocking them down. And you got Rochester and Emory, who you overlook a little bit. They're going to be a challenge. And Brandeis is shown to be competitive this year. So it'll be a strong finish for the last 5 just to finish the season 87 straight to get into the NCAA tournament. I did say this on the show earlier, and I'll just get it out of the way now. I think if they can win a national title undefeated, which would be the first time a team has won 3 straight national titles all undefeated, I don't see how anybody stops them next year, because everybody but Caroline Pepper comes back. And that, with all that experience and all of that talent coming back, plus whatever you add to it, next year might be scary. By the way, what I mean is, watch UConn's number of 101 would be at stake. That 10 games in the season would tie it, and 11 would break that record. Because, yeah, I spent the day doing that math. All right, let's talk their actual top 25, where NYU remains number one. As we do on the men's side, we start off on the dubious side. And Scott, being the Super Bowl champion fan, we will give you the honors of starting this one off, sir.
All right. Well, the best that I could come up with for this show for my dubious pick is Ohio Wesleyan. I think they were 9th when I picked them earlier this morning. They dropped one spot. They're 10th in the poll right now. They are 18-2, which certainly feels like a top 10 team. They are 37th in efficiency margin. They do have 6 top 50 wins, which is 5th most. And they've played a pretty hard schedule, 26th hardest in the nation. Now, since we're kind of splitting hairs about these teams nearer the top, they do have just a plus 6.4 margin of victory against their top 150 opponents that they've played. And so in their best 5 wins, the strongest 5 teams they've played and beat, they've won by 3, 7, 2, 10, and 5. And it's not too hard to see some of those going the opposite direction. See, I said I would follow up on Ryan's use of margin of victory and rewriting history. They did, close all those games out, and they do also have a couple losses by similarly narrow margins that you could argue flip the other direction. But one of my philosophies when I'm voting is who's going to win on a neutral court tomorrow. I'm not quite sure of the status of Macy Miller, who didn't play in the last game, which also might temper it a little bit for me. If I had to pound the table for where they am, they're 9th on my ballot. So I'm actually calling a team dubious who's lower on the national ballot than on my own. I don't know if I would put them lower than 14th if I really tried to push them down as, based on all of the negative parts and kind of ignoring some of the positive parts. But there's my case for a dubious Ohio Wesleyan.
It almost begs a question. What are you doing voting for him in 9th spot if you got all these dubious thoughts? Ryan, your thoughts on Mr. Dubious here?
Yeah, well, I mean, so it's interesting. I have them at 10 this week. I did not like that home loss to John Carroll. Now, obviously, John Carroll is really good. I had Ohio Wesleyan in my estimation ahead of John Carroll by a half a tier. I didn't think that they were, obviously they're teams that could beat each other, but I didn't think they were comparable. And so what I chose to do, being generous this week, is just make this a really big win for JCU and not lower the Ohio Wesleyan estimation in this. So I kind of jumped John Carroll up a bit after that one, but that really does give me pause. So if you're looking for reasons to doubt a team, which I don't know why we would be doing other than that's part of the gimmick right now.
Exactly.
That's what I would say is I'm not sure John Carroll is the team that a top 10 team should be losing to at the moment, even though it's perfectly possible.
And I've wanted to think that John Carroll is not a top 10 team, but I watched Denison John Carroll and I watched Ohio Wesleyan John Carroll and I've watched other John Carroll games, and I think they're really good. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They have a lot of really good players. And so I have no idea what to do with these 3 NCAC teams. I have them 7, 9, and 10. And I'm not convinced my order is correct at all, with John Carroll ahead of the other 2. I think they're all quality teams. I wouldn't want to face them in the tournament. Wouldn't be surprised to see them win 2 games each.
Yeah, if anyone's near Ohio when that conference tournament comes around, you need to be heading to those games because it's going to be something.
No, I agree with you. I think the conference rate. I agree also that the John Carroll loss. I think John Carroll's a good team, but it's at home, right? That's the one you need to win. You already got him right earlier in the season. Yeah, back on the 3rd, you beat him 65-63 at your place. Kind of need.
They played 3 quarters without Macy Miller.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's an interesting one. Yeah, good choice. I think it's a thinker at the very least. And Ohio Wesleyan's having a good season, but you got to stay consistent. All right, Mr. Scott, who is your dubious selection of the evening?
Before I get there, I got to make one slight correction. If you're watching the men's part of this, that
Sure.
TC and J already had their senior night. So all of that dragging of Matt Goldsmith, I'll apologize. He might go to the game because it's the last one, but it's not for senior night.
I like how you just said dragging. That's brilliant. You took strays and got dragged all in one show.
So in the spirit of dragging, I guess is what we're doing when we're doing Dubious here.
Should we change dubious to dragging?
Maybe. The team that I'm going to point out is Johns Hopkins. They're sitting at 3 in the new poll, which I feel like is too high, but like, is it 2 spots? Can't be more than that. This is what, an undefeated team that has just smashed some really good competition this year. Again, pulling threads. The one thing I would say, having watched them against Trinity, Connecticut, I was there in person, which is one of the bigger teams that they played against, really seemed to struggle against size on both sides of the ball. Having some really quality big players seem to give them some fits. Their guards rebound really well, and they've got great pressure, great ball handling. I think when they're playing, good ball control teams, they'll be fine. My questions are like, if they're playing Elsa Delario, if they're playing Mary Slicener, if they've got, like WashU or Carroll, some of these teams that have really, really strong post players, is that going to expose some sort of weakness in this team? And that is it's a stretch of an if, but that is the one thing I see that gives me a little bit of pause. I can't imagine you'd put them, much farther down than 5, 6, or 7 at the very worst, but I think 3 might be a couple spots too high.
Maybe the Pitt win is still resonating with people's, not Pitt, sorry, Morgan State win. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have them 4, and I see a pretty big gap to whoever I want to put 5. But I think your concerns are spot on. I was looking at box scores recently. I think Johns Hopkins had 64 rebounds against Muhlenberg. And I believe Trinity had 60 rebounds against some team early in the year. So it makes sense that facing each other, they both had a hard time getting out to a large rebounding advantage. And one thing I do look for among top teams as a red flag is if you have a really standout rebound or turnover margin, because you run into a game against another top team and they can neutralize that pretty quick and put you on your heels if you've been reliant on it. And Johns Hopkins has by far the best rebounding margin against other top 150 teams at a plus 11.8 per game. And I think if they run into a game where it's only plus 5 and they don't have the shots attempted advantage, that they can struggle. But I have them 4. I didn't even really consider putting them 5, but maybe they could be a little bit dubious at 3.
Go ahead.
We're really picking the nits there. That was the one thing I noticed was that their post players are kind of young, and the offensive choices maybe if they ran into somebody really big down there to play defense against might limit them in some fashion. But we're talking like way down the line at this point. But you've seen them in person too, Dave. So
yeah, I just saw them last week against Gettysburg at Bream Gymnasium. Just for record, by the way, Scott. Yeah, 64-37 was that Muhlenberg rebounding differential. When I saw Hopkins warming up, I've seen him on video, right? And I saw him in person and went, oh, they're a lot bigger than I thought they were. What was really strange, though, is their 3 biggest players weren't doing a lot of warming up. They were sitting on the bench, and it wasn't an injury thing. I don't know what it was. And I had watched their game against Gettysburg earlier in the season, and that was a tough game. Gettysburg was within 9 for the most part for about 3.5 quarters, and then Hopkins just rolled past them. This was not that game. So it started off, Hopkins kind of played well. Gettysburg got back in. It's second quarter, 24-18, like high scoring for both teams. And I think if memory serves, no fouls called in that second quarter at all for either team. And I remember going to halftime going, yeah, I don't think Gettysburg can do this. Goldstein inside is good. I think she'd get eaten up alive by Mary Slicener. And that's no knock at Goldstein, but she was starting to have trouble in the second half with Gettysburg's players in Krenzig and Standish and Bertolet, and nothing against those three. Maybe combined, they're as good as Mary Sliessner. And I saw Hopkins struggling a little bit to kind of stay with what they wanted to do. Now, I have to consider Gettysburg's defense. Nate Davis is a genius. They will ruin teams what they want to do. And the second half was played to Gettysburg standards. And Gettysburg came back from down 9 with like a minute left to go in that game to have a shot at tying it at the end. Hats off to the Hopkins defense. So I get the dubious. I was not as blown away as I thought I was with that team last week. And I feel like they're still trying to work on some things, which is stunning to say for a team that is 20-0. Ursinus was a 17-point win. Haverford was a 23-point win. This conference, Dickinson, they held to 40. Clearly, Dickinson, who likes to ruin people's day, couldn't do anything with Hopkins. They've got McDaniel coming up. If Beckett is at full strength, and I don't think she is, sounds like she played against Gettysburg and probably shouldn't have. If she's full strength, that could be a fascinating inside game. If Beckett's not there, I don't think Hopkins can get stopped. And then it's F&M, Mary Washington, Dickinson. I think they go into the conference tournament on a roll. So I think it comes down to the McDaniel game, to be honest. All right. Done with dubious. We'll do deep dive. Who do you guys got?
So the team that I was kind of surprised to be sort of in consideration, didn't vote for, that's kind of how the deep dive works. But the team that I was not expecting to be back looking at was out in the ARC in Iowa. I think this was a team we had a lot of expectations for coming in. We found out like right as the season was starting, Taylor Brunson, their all everything player, was not going to be playing this year, which definitely changed the outlook. Took a couple of losses early that is easy to kind of write off when you add that onto the injury. The only real like super nice looking, mildly nice looking win is over Wartburg back in December. And that Wartburg team is much different now than they were back then. They were so young. But playing Oshkosh pretty close, playing Bethel pretty close. There's definitely some talent on this team. I think we probably would have had them top 15 if they were full strength this year, but maybe this is a team that's like, 25 to 35 range and we need to be looking out for because they can certainly win that conference. I think Wartburg is much improved, but not so much that they're going to run away with this thing. So we may see them in the NCAAs here.
By the way, folks, sorry, my mute button a little weird there. You're going to see a little bit of a pattern in Ryan Scott's choices tonight. Logo-wise, at least. Scott, your thoughts on the Cohawks?
I think Co is a great deep dive. They're one of 8 teams in my just missed category, which is pretty close to the teams that I had in the back end of my top 25. Co, pretty good numbers across the board. Not very many that jump out at you in either the positive or negative direction, and they just keep winning against probably the strength of schedule is the thing that drags them down the most at this point, 182nd in the nation. But worst loss is against Team 78. They have beat a team in the top 50, which is probably Wartburg, right? 32. And yeah, I think this is a good team. I don't think I would blink twice if someone put them in the top 25, which I think a couple of people did.
Yeah, by the way, we never mentioned, or I didn't, Bethel and New Paltz into the poll, La Crosse, Southern Maine out, Cortland and New Paltz trading points, essentially. Cortland's up 1 point out of the top 25. Co is getting 4, so it's one voter voting them in the 22nd spot, or it's voters kind of divvying it up down there in that bottom 2 or 3 spots. Scott, your deep dive.
All right, my deep dive is Wisconsin River Falls, who is not on anyone's ballot, probably because they are 12-9.
This feels like a yeshiva pick to me, Scott.
But here's what we're gonna do. So, again, we're going to point differential or margin of loss. They've lost games by 5, 7, 6, and 3 against some really good teams. And for comparison's sake, like River Falls has the second hardest schedule in the nation. And I'm going to compare them to St. Mary's of Minnesota, who has the 96th hardest schedule and is 17-4, or 5 games better in both the win and the loss column, who I have on my ballot, which maybe this is really dumb that I'm going to make a case for River Falls being above a better basketball team than St. Mary's. But if you take out the 4 losses for River Falls against their hardest teams, which are harder than any team St. Mary's has played this year at all, if you just take them out, and if you take out St. Mary's 5 worst wins against teams in the 300, which are worse than any team River Falls has played this year, then they have almost the same record. And if you go line by line, River Falls has played and beat better teams. And so I did a little win probability rewriting, looking backwards. And if you put River Falls up against St. Mary's schedule, they would also be 17-4. And if you put St. Mary's up against River Falls schedule, they would be 11-10, 1 game worse. And I think it's just like they're so different in the opponents that they faced and also in the win-loss that it's hard to analyze. So I kind of tried to pull out the results that don't help me compare the teams, for better or for worse. Your record is your record against the teams that you did play. But I think that they're quite closer in ability and impressiveness relative to the schedule that they've played than it might seem for teams that are 5 games apart.
While Ryan starts to talk, I am going to change the logo from River Falls to Yeshiva. This feels like a very similar argument.
So, I mean, I was kind of flabbergasted when you pulled this one up. I was like, this is an awfully deep dive. But then I started looking at it. So
now you know how it feels.
Well, you're voting for the other 4 WIAC teams. I was only able to manage to get 3 of them into my poll, right? So that I wasn't even really looking at River Falls. And I think if I had managed to get down that far, I probably would have seen some of this stuff. So they have only lost to teams who are better than them, right? Mm-hmm. And yes. If you look the whole way down, like there are no losses. Well, Dave is laughing at me. Like there's not a single bad loss on there.
I know, but think about the way that's said. They've only lost to teams that are better than them. Uh-huh.
Well, right, but that's not true of hardly anybody.
No, I know. It's just the way it's phrased.
That rarely happens, but you see how many of them there are, right? And that's where you get into this yeshiva problem, right? With the resume. And so I really am hypocritical if I'm saying that they're not worth consideration. I do think the big difference is that they do play in a power conference, and I would like to see them beat at least 1 out of the 8 games that they play against the teams that are better than them. And that's kind of the big difference. I can actually, overlook the non-conference losses against good teams. But if you're in the WIAC and you're the 5th best team, you need to have beaten 1 of the top 4 at some point, and they have yet to do that. Or they got 1, right? They got 1.
They're 5-5 in conference.
So they're good.
Well, they beat Oshkosh. They beat Oshkosh 69-40. Oh, I'm sorry.
You did not beat Oshkosh. They beat Platteville.
Oh, apologies. I'm on the
2.
wrong page.
They beat Platteville by 2. Mm-hmm. And so I guess by what I just said, they're good enough, right? But I think I mean for the deep dive, they're perfectly appropriate, right? There's a team that maybe you're not voting for, and I don't think you voted for them. I don't think anybody's voting for them. But just like Co, they very well could be in the 25 to 35 range, and it just seems crazy for a record like that. But when you look at what they've done, I mean, the argument can certainly be made.
Yeah,
and I don't want to give them credit for the teams that they've played and lost to, but I think if I don't want that to drag down their win-loss when other teams haven't faced that type of schedule. And I think River Falls wins do stack up pretty well with other teams in that 25 to 40 range.
Yeah, we should not discount that opening Calvin game when Calvin actually had all of their players. Like that's
nope,
that's a oh, they still didn't? Oh, okay, I guess I missed that.
They did an opening weekend, but I believe Calvin did for the Whitewater and Ohio Bowdoin Winds.
Right. This is why Scott is here.
Yeah, they beat Platteville, was who I was thinking of. By the way, this conference is wild. Stout's the worst, quote unquote, in the conference at 2-8 with Eau Claire, and they're 11-10. Eau Claire's 12-9. River Falls 12-9, La Crosse 13-8, Stevens Point 14-7, Whitewater 16-15, 16-5, Platteville 17-4, Oshkosh 20-1. This is a bonkers conference in terms of talented teams. So, I mean, I can understand in this case diving deep to talk about the Falcons. I mean, that is a wild conference race right now. Even if Oshkosh is walking away with it.
The conference played the hardest non-conference schedule, and they had the best record against non-conference teams of any conference.
Yeah.
Twofer.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I'd be fascinated to see what happens in March with WIAC teams. Unfortunately, they might have to go through each other a little bit. But maybe the committee can at least try and keep some of them away from each other this season. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Good choice. Love it. All right. Debatable. Scott, you're up.
My debatable is Bethel, who moved into the poll at 24 this week. They're 16-5, 58th in efficiency margin. They have 6 top 50 wins. So all teams I talked about tonight, Ohio Wesleyan, River Falls, and Bethel, have beat 6 top 50 teams, which is 5th most in the nation. Bethel's played a pretty strong schedule, 34th hardest schedule. Their margin against good teams in the rebounding battle and turnovers is right around even. And they've kind of squeaked by in a lot of games, but they've also been with and without Ellie Schmitz throughout this year, and they've put up a couple good results recently. And I think I just have a lot of really conflicting information and don't feel like I have a good feel on Bethel at the moment. I feel like they're trending a little bit and could be even in the low teens, but I also don't think it's crazy to have them off your ballot.
Ryan, your thoughts on the old Bethel?
Yeah, I mean, we're debating teams that we don't really have a good clue on. Like I was looking at it at voting this week, and I've continued to vote for them, and I think they're a good team. And like you said, having Ellie Smith in and out makes it real hard to get a read on what they are, because she makes a big difference, especially, a team that's sort of at the bottom of the poll or just off it. Having one good player in or out can make a real difference for where you are there. I have wondered, though. I mean, obviously they have the 2 good WIAC wins back before Christmas. But a lot of the good teams they played, they have not beaten. And I do wonder how much having beaten Concordia Moorhead twice is playing into our perceptions of them. Like if that was a split or they had lost both of those, like I don't think they would be anywhere close to consideration, right? The fact that they beat a team that we all kind of know is good twice is doing a lot, at least in my mind, for the resume. I think if they're completely healthy, that's a team nobody wants to play. But we don't know for sure that they'll be healthy all the time. And, they've just, the league is really good this year. And so splitting with some of these teams, what they split with St. Scholastica and one of the other, St. Mary's, is that the one? Like you can kind of excuse that, but when you add in some of the other losses, it's just hard to get a good read on where they are. And so I think that's why, I mean, this tournament is going to be another one. If you're not in Ohio, but you do happen to be in Minnesota, this is another conference that's going to have a great tournament that you can get to. That should tell us a lot. And if they can come out of that, I think that'll prove quite a bit for their prospects in March.
And there's upset potential all through the MIAC. It's not just your top teams. Like they're a really balanced conference with a good mid-tier that's going to make that tournament real tough to come out of.
Yeah. Again, another interesting MIAC race. Pat Coleman will be in the area. Maybe the men's race isn't worth going to, but the women's race will be worth chiming in on. Yeah, I don't know what to make of the conference. All I know is it's proving to be too many guests to try and get on the show to talk about it. Bethel's definitely on the radar. We just had a great conversation with this is what happens when your brain just goes mush. Was it Concordia
Moorhead on?
Moorhead, that was who it was. Yeah, it was Moorhead who had such a great season, or is having such a great season. And yeah, I Bethel, Concordia Moorhead, St. Mary's. Come on, it's another great conference. All right, Ryan. Anybody who's been paying attention, let's see what the theme of Ryan's choices are tonight.
I didn't quite get it there at first, but then I figured it out. We're going to go back to the WIAC. And I'm not sure what to make of Whitewater at this moment. I think this is a team that a lot of us have had in the top 10 or right around 10 for much of the year. They started out so strong, right? They beat Wash U. I know Milliken's not what they were, but going there looks good at the beginning of the year. They beat Illinois Wesleyan, then Carroll. That trip to Texas looked fantastic. Um, and they've gotten into conference play. And obviously, we've just talked about how good the WIAC is. But losing at home to La Crosse, home to Oshkosh, and then just recently home to Stout makes me wonder, right? That I don't think we had this kind of expectation coming in, given what they lost last year. And so the hot start, I wonder if that just kind of supercharged their team in our minds. And now they're maybe falling back to earth a little bit. Not that they are not a top 25 team, or not that they're not super good, but maybe I'm just not sure if they're the top 10 team that I kind of thought they were for most of the year. And I mean, it's not their fault necessarily, because I think they're wildly outperforming expectations one way or another. But just not quite sure what to make of them. And I don't know, I haven't seen them in as much as I would have liked. So I don't know if you've watched them at all, Scott, to get a sense of the eye test of what they look like. So I just figured this is a good debate.
You picked a great one because I'm not sure a team has moved more on my ballot than Whitewater. They were not on my preseason ballot. Then they entered at some point. Last week I had them number 6. And then this week I have them number 11. Both of which probably are among the highs among the voters. And even though I was dead wrong in the preseason, I don't think I wanted to make up for it by putting them higher and higher, but I kind of wanted to doubt what I still want. Maybe I just wanted to be my preseason to be right. I wanted to doubt what they were doing because I just saw Carollo did everything for them last year, and losing Carollo and Hildebrand, and then they're so good this year. So I've probably watched 3 of their games in the last month, and it's just the same recipe of they're extremely fundamentally sound. They feed it to the post at every opportunity to almost anyone. And they get a lot of easy buckets. They don't give up easy buckets, and they make the timely 3. And it just kind of seems like the same recipe. Nothing's going to be easy. That I was like, I think their floor is really, really high. Maybe they're going to get nipped on some nights by teams that put up a great performance against them. But it just seemed like, this is one of the teams I would least like to face on just a random tournament night, because I think the floor is really, really high. And I could easily be swayed that the ceiling isn't very high either, and that 6 was too high. But I think you know what you're getting, and it's a team that you just don't want to play.
I mean, Kerry Carollo is a great coach, right? We know that. So they're going to be ready. They're going to be prepared. They're going to be a good squad. I think they're just getting used to playing, even to this point, with a different team. And what we just described is an absolutely wild WIAC race right now, with very good teams. But they've got some really good wins on their resume. Almost a team that's flying under the radar. I mean, they almost could feel like a deep dive if they weren't 16th. They don't feel like a 16th team. Like, no one's talking about them. We're used to them being ranked higher. So it's just, it's weird. It's a weird year. Good picks. Real quick, just because I had some fun doing it. Hold on. There's Ryan's picks for anybody watching at home. Blue Jays, Cohawks, Whitewater, all birds looking left to right, progressing from smaller to larger logos, width-wise. Rather interesting choices today, Ryan. Then again, my show was rather interesting today with all the damn connections I didn't realize until I was on air. Gentlemen, any thoughts coming up on the weeks ahead, whatever, as this season comes to a close, Scott?
I have one tidbit from your, I think, neck of the woods, Dave. I think Susquehanna versus Catholic this Wednesday will end up being an NCAA tournament play-in game. Because I think both of them can afford one more regular season loss and one more conference tournament loss, and they both got to play Scranton left in the regular season.
That is an interesting thought, sir. that game is going to be at Catholic. Wow. I never thought of it. That's probably a very, very valid point. The conference, Dice Can's talking about it on the stream, is Scranton is walking away, even though they only got a 1-game lead on Catholic. They're dominating teams. Their closest result was Elizabethtown by 9, and they've already revenged that by 40. Yeah, interesting. Susquehanna is a good team. I feel like Catholic isn't as good as we thought they were. Ooh, good call, sir. That's a good one.
And right now, Susquehanna is ahead in my simulations, and I think that's because Catholic has to play Elizabethtown as well, and Susquehanna is done playing Elizabethtown. But if both of these teams only lose to Scranton from here on out, I think this becomes a play-in game. So that does necessitate Catholic to beat Elizabethtown on the 18th.
That's a good one. That's one I'm now going to pay attention to. I'm trying to think what my Wednesday schedule is if I can get that on DC. To be honest with you, I don't know if I want to drive to DC. I was supposedly going to go to DC for some MLB work. I would have absolutely stuck around for that game. Oh well, I'll watch it online. Some will, at least on Flow. Ryan, any tidbits like that? That's a good one.
It's not that one, but something else that we should be thinking about. About once a week, the last couple of weeks, I've gotten a projected tournament field from either Scott or Matt Snyder at D3 Datacast, and I've been trying to do some bracketing. And every week, it seems that the women's field, what we expect it to be, is really, really difficult to bracket. The geography is a mess. We've got teams flying all over the place. There's not enough high seeds in the Midwest, or there's not enough middle seeds. There's too many highs. Anyway, I did the best I could today with the projected bracket. They're all up on Twitter now. You can go take a look at it. It was not satisfactory. I think it's still the best I could do. Too many flights, too many teams playing each other that shouldn't have to. And that was all still based on Brevard being able to host a first round pod, which the chances that Brevard is filling out their paperwork right now to host a pod is basically nil. So it would just get worse.
Yeah, forget it. No.
So I'm giving this shout out to anyone who will see this. If you are a team that has any thought of maybe pulling an upset in your conference tournament, or, you might find yourself in the NCAA tournament somehow, if you still have hope, fill out this paperwork, especially if you live in the southeastern part of the United States where Emory will not be able to host for the women because their men will be hosting. It could go anywhere down there. If you are in Alabama or Mississippi or North Carolina, you got 10 days left to fill out the hosting paperwork. Please, 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 for everybody's sake, do it. You might find yourself getting a home game in the tournament.
It does not hurt to put in paperwork to host, no matter your situation, because you never know. Your deadline is February 20. Plain and simple. Get it in.
We are looking at like LaGrange. LaGrange might be the 62nd ranked team, and they could host if they put the paperwork in. Like, this is where we're looking right now at what is going on. The women's tournament is all over the place. So any women's team who thinks they might be in, they should get 300 applications for hosting at this committee right now. I mean,
yep. USAC, SAA, CCS, get your paperwork in.
Get it in. Absolutely.
10 days. It's the 19th. They're doing the 19th. Get them in.
The 19th or the 20th? I thought they would do the 20th. It should be the Friday.
Today.
It should be
Maybe
the Friday.
Men said the 19th and the women said the 20th. I forget.
It is February 20th at 5 p.m. Eastern.
There we go.
So it might have been the men's thing
today, by 1 p.m. Eastern on the 20th.
Yep. Get them in. I mean, my first year in Division III was this example. Women's team at my alma mater lost in the semifinals, might make the NCAAs great, but zero chance of any, home games. And I get a call because Salisbury forgot to put their paperwork in. We're hosting a one-off game in the middle of the week, because they didn't have even brackets at the time. And we were wearing road jerseys because technically Salisbury was the home team. Conference rival, by the way, back then, so that was even wilder. But still, get your paperwork in. It'll also make Ryan Scott's night a lot easier as he tries to bracket.
It's going to make I don't have to answer the questions from Dave after this bracket comes out. Like, I am really, really, really feeling for this women's basketball committee, because half of them aren't going to be able to be doing it in the first place. Meg Barber's on the committee. She's not going to be.
Yep.
She probably can just sit back and relax. I don't think she's going to be on anything. But
I got to ask Meg someday about
it is going to be tough. It is going to be. It is not taking me less than 2 hours for any of these mock brackets that I've done to get this together, which is highly unusual to put something together like that. So
someday I'm going to ask a coach like Meg Barber. It's like, I understand why you want to serve on these committees, but why would you do it when you're in the mix? Or choose another sport. Maybe be a administrator on the field hockey one. Guys, appreciate the time. Good stuff. Really awesome as always. Enjoy the next week. We'll look forward to catching up with you guys next week or whenever we catch up with you. Take care.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Peterson, Ryan Scott here on the Hoopsville Hotline. Dice Canton was posting along as we were doing the show. We mentioned those Scranton scores. He mentioned his Brandeis team's been up 10 points in women's basketball in the final 3 minutes and not always won the game. Man, I feel for you, bud. I've seen that too. 3 games left for the tournament that I have left to evaluate Scranton, and the last 2 Saturdays left versus Susquehanna and Catholic, followed by Landmark Conference Tournament. I agree, Scott Peterson, the Susquehanna versus Catholic is a game to watch on Wednesday. Absolutely. It's a great pick by Scott Peterson on that case. If you're watching us on the archive, thank you. But please consider being, if you don't have early access, joining buymeacoffee.com/Hoopsville and becoming a subscriber and a member like Dice Canton is. He's able to join us on the live show and chat with us on the YouTube because he is a Hoopsville member. So go to buymeacoffee.com/Hoopsville. Role player or higher gets you access. You also get my top 25 ballot, which I finally caught up. Last week's ballot has been posted if you're watching this live or in the immediate days after it's been aired. And this week's, week 10, will be out very shortly. A reminder, Thursday's show will be at noon Eastern. We're back again here on Monday next week at noon, and then with this show at 8:30. February 19th, speaking of committees, we'll be talking to both national committees. If you've got questions you want to have answered, hopefully we'll get a chance to ask them. We do have the rights to maybe not present those questions, or if they're repeats, for example. But Hoopsville at D3Sports.com. We'll start pushing that hard here starting tomorrow. Hoopsville at D3Sports.com. Quick side note. Other than buymeacoffee.com, if you want to support us also, we have an Amazon wish list. We'll start sending that out more often. We need items for the studio, like more hangers for our uniforms. And if you want to send us jerseys, swag, stuff to put on the shelves, something for me to wear, email me, hoopsville at D3Sports.com. We will send you information. We already sent out a video today about vintage jersey. We've got a whole mess of videos every day this week. And we got more to come. So plenty of content, but bring it. Let's go. I've got a couple of shirts I can wear in the near future. And I might even be wearing a jersey soon. Believe it or not. You might not want to see it, but I might be wearing one. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA studios. This is the Top 25 Double Take Show. Thanks to Matt Snyder, Ryan Scott, and Scott Peterson for joining us on the show. Terrific content as always. We will sign off on this one, start getting ready for Thursday's show and next week's Top 25. Remember, go to D3Hoops.com for all your links to live stats, to videos, etc. Those we have missing, we will try and get updated. But for the most part, we have a lot of them on there. And thank you for tuning in to this show. I know there's a handful watching tonight live. Really appreciate it. And follow us on the socials. They're at the bottom of your screen. If you're on podcast, you know our socials. Look for Hoopsville on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook. We're also on Blue Sky, but to be honest, we haven't used it this season, and that's my apologies. Maybe for the postseason, we'll get up and running. Already hearing about who's going to be on the broadcast for the men's and women's championship weekends. Looking forward to seeing those people in action, and we'll have more information on that down the road as well. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this latest edition of the Top 25 Double Take. And if you're a Hoopsville member, hope you enjoyed it live or on demand for a while before we release it to the general public. And with that, We'll see you on Tuesday or on Thursday. You've been watching Hoopsville, Top 25 Double Take Show, presented by D3Hoops.com. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week. If you want to talk Division III basketball, you've got to listen to Hoopsville. Grayson, you're just tuning in as I'm signing off, man. You got to be in here a little bit sooner. Maybe go back. We bet we answered your question there. Talk to you guys all soon.